Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. This is where we take a look at the big events, reports and releases coming up this week that give insight into the economy and a look back at what happened last week too. I'm Sean Aylmer, and every Monday I'm joined for the week ahead by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekouk.com, Thekouk, and on Twitter using the handle thekouk. Stephen, I love spelling the Kouk, Thekouk.
Well, it was a bit of a funny abbreviation of Koukoulas, and I think my daughter gave it to me amongst other unkind people. But anyway, it sort of stuck, and I'm happy to live with it. I'm a bit of a kook anyway.
When I first met you, and this is you went and spent some time working at the Financial Review, and I was working there, and I remember the editor at the time, a guy called Glenn Burge, saying, the Kouk's here. And I thought, the what's here? I had no idea what he was talking about, and he always called you the Kouk.
Yeah.
And so anyway, you turned out
He's
to be a star.
Glenn's a good bloke, and I enjoyed my time at the AFR. Gosh, that was a long time ago now.
It was. Let's not talk about it. Look, last week, a bit going on. The Reserve Bank didn't do anything too surprising.
No, as expected, they left all of the policy settings, the interest rate, their bond buying program and the like, completely unchanged. Their analysis of the economy was actually relatively short. In a sense, they're just saying to the markets and to the business people and the like that they're just going to see how the economy pans out over this next couple of months as the lockdowns are coming to an end quite clearly. And when we kick off 2022 in the very near future, they're going to be really then just taking a bit of a recast of what sort of recovery we're going to see as the lockdowns end, what's happening in the global economy, and, of course, what's happening in the housing, which, of course, was another issue that popped up last week.
Yeah, so, I mean, housing with APRA, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, saying it will actually change serviceability limits. What do you make of that?
Yeah, look, it's a marginal thing. You've got this dilemma in the housing market where we do want to improve affordability, particularly for first home buyers. So in a sense, you've got a lot of state governments in particular throwing money at first home buyers with stamp duty concessions and fairly chunky cash grants to people. And then at the other hand, you've now got APRA saying, well, hang on, if you're one of these marginal borrowers, we change effectively the stress test when you apply for a loan. Instead of a 2.5 percentage point lift on where interest rates are today, we've got to make that threshold 3 percentage points. It's a little bit harder for people who are very much at the margin in terms of getting a new loan. So at the end of the day, it's probably not going to have a huge impact. Other things will matter more at the end of the day, like when we get immigration coming back into the economy. And indeed, if in fact we do get a discussion and unfolding of interest rate rises during next year or so, that'll be way more important than what APRA did. Look, it's fair enough. We don't want the banks lending people who aren't going to repay them. And at the margin, it'll just sort of dampen some demand.
And just before we leave last week, a whopping trade figure.
$15 billion for the month. Goodness. Again, a record high monthly trade number. We're exporting like crazy, even though the iron ore prices clearly come off quite dramatically this last couple of months. The volumes and the price is still elevated, really, compared to the cost of production. But we've also got this incredible surge in other energy prices, natural gas, coal prices. And of course, we're still a big exporter of those things. And given that imports have been constrained by this weak economy, import values were very low. So we had this quite spectacular $15 billion trade surplus. And that's one of the reasons why the economy's sort of kept its head above water in these difficult COVID times.
Well, that's last week. We'll be back in a moment and get into the week ahead. I'm with economist Stephen Koukoulas, aka The Kouk. So, Stephen, we'll get to the big one in a moment, but there's business confidence and consumer sentiment data out.
And they're both really good indicators. I like to see what consumers and business are thinking. The NAB survey will be sort of reflecting how the businesses are seeing the economy. Now, clearly, the survey was conducted a couple of weeks ago and they're publishing the results this week. But it'll sort of be a guide to whether this optimism as the lockdowns are sort of on the horizon anyway will be sparking a lift in hiring in terms of selling prices, capacity utilisation, and indeed just general business confidence. So that's a good indicator on the business side. And for us consumers, the Westpac Consumer Sentiment Index has got a really good track record at picking the swings in the mood of the consumer linked to things like unemployment, stock market changes and these sorts of things. And you'd expect that with these lockdowns coming to an end, these really high vaccination rates coming through in most places, that consumers will be a little bit more optimistic.
Okay, but the big one next week is a labour force data for September. Now, August, we had this almost unbelievable unemployment rate of 4.5%. Why do you think it will happen this week?
I've almost given up trying to forecast these monthly moves in the labour force numbers because of those, quirks is sort of an understatement. That, the funny thing about that low unemployment rate was the fact that we still had, if I remember correctly, several 100,000 people counted as employed, but they were working 0 hours.
Yeah.
That's the effect of the lockdowns and some of the support payments that are going out to workers. So we had this really strange labour force result. But suffice to say, the labour market is still weak. When we look at aggregate hours worked, so how many hours the 13 odd million people are working, that was very, very weak. So I think we'll be analysing that to see whether the labour market still is weak. And there's no doubt it will be because, of course, as you mentioned, these are for the month of September. Lockdowns in New South Wales, Victoria, ACT, closed borders in other states. So likely to be another weak result in terms of employment and hours worked. But as we've been noting for some time now, the demand for labour is still pretty good. The job vacancies and job ad series are still quite firm.
And Stephen, I know you're Canberra-based, but certainly New South Wales should get a fillip from today with reopening, and that should help the labour market as we go forward.
Oh, no doubt about that. That demand for workers, and in fact, I'm already hearing from a couple of different sources that the restaurants, pubs, and clubs are all opening, and they can't find staff. So to the extent that they're wanting to open, obviously you need someone to cook the meals and serve the beers and all the rest of it. Yes, it's going to be a constraint on that opening up, but in a sense, it's a sign that the economy is really like the proverbial coiled spring, ready to unleash. So again, there's optimism hopefully coming through as these lockdowns, not just in New South Wales from now, but hopefully very soon in the ACT and hopefully in Victoria in the not too distant future.
Stephen, have a great week.
Thanks, John.
That was economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kook. You can find him at thekook.com and follow him on Twitter using the handle The Kook. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.